A total of 5,000 is invested, part at 6% and the remainder at 12%. How much is invested at each rate if the annual interest is $480? One thing we're going to be using to figure out this stuff is our formula where we have a principal, which is the amount of money invested, times a rate, which is the percentage, and this is over multiplied by the amount of time that this thing's invested, and this equals the interest that we earn. So this is like putting money in a savings account and getting money back and making money off of what you invest. Okay. So the one thing we're not going to have in our problem with a lot of these is our time, because it's going to say that it's annually, which means that it's over the course of 1 year. And 1 times anything is just that other number. And it doesn't matter if you're doing 6 times 1, it equals 6, right? So this 1 becomes irrelevant. So this is all we're going to be really looking at is P times R, and that equals our interest. And you can see that happen here. This is our rate, which is our percentages, right? That's what this is actually equal to, times the amount of money invested, plus the rate of that one, which is the amount of money invested here, and that equals our interest earned. You can see that we just have X and Y here. That's the total money invested, and if we added those two together, that's where that 5,000 comes from. We do want to go ahead and solve this one. We don't want to put in the equations. I imagine sometimes we will have to do that, but we can go straight to work on this thing. And I like substitution, so I'm going to multiply this one times a negative 0.06. That way this becomes a negative 0.06x. And this is going to be a negative 0.06y. And if we do 5,000 times a negative 0.06, that gives us 300, a negative 300. And so these eliminate. This gives us 0.06y. And then we got 180 left over on that side. So we're going to do 180. We're going to divide it by 0.06 because we're dividing by 0.06 on both sides. And we find out that y is equal to 3,000. So then we can just substitute it in here. So we got x plus 3,000 equals to 5,000. So if we subtract 5,000, subtract 3,000 on both sides, we're going to find out that our x is equal to 2,000. Now one thing I want you to observe is that you did assign this x to be associated with that 6%, and the y is associated with the 12%. A total of 9,000 is invested, part at 5% and the remainder at 13%. How much is invested at each rate if the annual interest is $550? This one's almost identical to the last one. We got our money that's being added together. It's being invested. That gives us 9,000. Here's our rate, which was 5% times the money invested, 13% times money invested here, and that's our total interest earned we earned through investing at both accounts. So once again, we're going to do this one by elimination. We're going to do a negative 0.05 here, which gives us a negative 0.05x, negative 0.05y, 0.05 on 1,000 is a negative 450. Once we do the subtraction, we're left with 8y, and this is equal to, I'm sorry, 0.08. Almost messed that up. 100 left over here, so we're going to divide 0.08. And so y is equal to 1250. And so once again, we plug this thing in where our y is and figure out what our x is equal to. So we subtract 1250 on both sides. X is equal to 7,750. Remember, X was associated with that 5%. Peter has half of investments in stock paying 6% dividend and the other half in stock paying 11% interest. This total annual interest is $510. How much does he have invested? So if we have half the money in one and half the money in other, that means that they took an equal amount and put half in one and half in the other, which means that each halves have an equal amount of money in it, right? If you get half and I get half, we're getting paid equal. So that's how we set up our first equation. Our second equation is just like we had it before. The rate times the money invested, rate times the money invested is equal to that. So basically what we can do is we can substitute our X in for our Y here because they're equal, they're interchangeable. So we're going to call this 0.06x plus 0.11x equals 510. So then we can just add these together. We get 0.17x is equal to 510. And then we're just going to divide by 0.17 on each side. And we're going to find out that x is equal to 3,000. And since x equals 3,000, that's also what y equals. I think if we added them together, which is probably what it's going to ask us, the total money that we invested was 6,000. So we got 3,000 in each and 6,000 in total. A dairy needs 235 gallons of 5% butterfat. How many gallons of each milk containing 7% butterfat and milk containing 2% butterfat must be used to obtain the desired 235 gallons? So here's our problem. This is our goal. We want to have 235 of this 5%. Okay, and so we got containers that we need to fill up with a certain amount of gallons of each one of these, and we want to know how many of each one do we have to put to hit this sweet spot that we're shooting for. So basically, this x plus this y needs to give us that 235. So that's going to be our first equation. X plus y equals 235. On this one, we got 7% of this, how many gallons we have. This is going to be our butterfat that's in this thing. So we need 0.07x to be what this one equals. That determines our butterfat that's in this one. And then we're going to add it to this one, which is 0.02y. And then we need to multiply this one times its percentage because we want to know how much butterfat is actually in this one. So this needs to be 0.05 times that 235. So I'm going to do a lot of math together in this next step. So I'm going to go ahead and do an elimination thing. And I'm going to eliminate this y by multiplying everything times a negative 0.02. I'm also going to multiply this one as we do this step as well. So we get a negative 0.02x, a negative 0.02y, and this equals 235 times 2.02. And that gives me a negative 4.7. I'm going to multiply these. We still got our 0.07x, our 0.02y, and then 0.05 times 235. That is 11.75. And now this will eliminate. This is going to give us 0.05x. And this is going to give us 7.05 once we combine these two here. So we're going to divide by 0.05. And we find out that x is equal to 141. And so we can substitute this thing in. So we got 141 plus y is equal to that 235. And so we just subtract 141 on both sides. We find out that y is equal to 94. Remember, we did associate the x with the 7% up here, so that's what we're going to tie that thing in with. A dairy needs 330 gallons of milk containing 7% butterfat. How many gallons each of milk containing 9% butterfat and milk containing 3% butterfat must be used to obtain the desired 330 gallons? And this is how we're setting this one up. Remember, we're adding the gallons together. They should equal that 330. And then we're getting the butterfat of each one. So the amount of butterfat times the percentage of butterfat times the amount of gallons we have will give us, this is our equation that would tell us what butterfat is in each one. Okay, so once again, I'm going to multiply to eliminate. That's by 0.03. And I'm going to do my math here. So we're going to get a negative 0.03x, a negative 0.03y, 330 is 9.9. That's a negative 9.9. We still got our 0.09x, our 0.03y. We need to do 0.07 times 330 as well. That gives me 23.1. So we do our elimination here. That gives us 0.06x. And we'll do our subtraction here. That gives us 13.2. And then we're going to divide by 06. And we find out x is equal to 220. And so we can plug this into our original equation. So we get 220 plus y is equal to that 330, and we can just subtract 220 on both sides, and y is equal to the 110. Remember that your x was associated with the 9%. On two investments totaling $15,000, Michelle lost 4% on one and 6% on the other. If her net annual receipts were $175, how much was each investment? Together, these things are totaling up, a total of $15,000. We lost money on this one, so this is a negative 4% that we lost on this one, and we gained 6% on this one. And let's go ahead and multiply this one times just 0.04. Remember, this one's already a negative, so we didn't have to add a negative to this one. So that's why I made that decision. So this is 0.04x. This is 0.04y. And then 15,000 for 600. So these eliminate. This turns out to be 0.1y now. And adding these together, we get 775. And we're going to take that 775 and divide it by our 0.1. And so y equals 7,750. Plug that into this equation. And find out that our x is equal to 72.50. They were pretty close to being almost the same amount of money. James invested some money at 6% interest. James also invested 211 more than 4 times that amount at 11%. How much is invested at each rate if James receives $1,522.21 in interest after 1 year? Use X and Y to set up a system of equations to solve the given problem. So we're going to have to set this one up first. So it said that there was money invested at that 6%, but it said that it was started talking about the Y was 4 times as much as that money invested plus $211 more than that. So that's why we set up our Y to be equal to this equation. So that's our first one. And so our second one is just the amount of interest earned. So together they're just totaling up this interest earned. So if we do the rate times the money invested for each one, that's our total interest earned. If you've been paying attention, I like to do elimination, but this one is set up for substitution. And I could move this thing over, so if you want to do elimination on this one, you can. But let's take a break from elimination. Do some substitutions, especially since we're set up for it. And this is what y is equal to. So we can substitute this in for our y right here. So we're just going to rewrite this equation with that in place of it. So we have our 0.06x plus our 0.11y that's equal to 4x plus 211. This is equal to our 1522.21. All right, so let's distribute this 0.11 in there. So we get 0.06x plus 0.44x. And then we're going to do 211 times 0.11. This is 2321. This is equal to that 1522. We can combine our x's at this point, and that's going to give us a 0.5x. So then we could subtract this 23.21 on both sides. So now we got 0.5x is equal to 1499. And so then we can divide by 0.5 on each side. So x is equal to 29.98. That means we can substitute this thing in right here. So y is going to be equal to 4 times this 29.98 plus 211 more. All right, so I got 11,992, and then we're going to add 211 more, so this y is equal to 12,203. On 2 investments totaling 7,000, Peter lost 3% on one and earned 6% on the other. If his net annual receipts were 294, how much was each investment? This is going back to one that we had seen before, where we're losing money on an investment, but this totals up to be 7,000. So let's just multiply both sides by this 0.03. Remember, this one's negative. So these cancel. This gives us 0.09 y. 210 plus 294 is 504. And then we can divide both sides by 0.09. And so y is equal to 5,600. And so we can plug that in. And minus our 5,600 on both sides. And our x is equal to 1,400. We're supposed to set up our equations first. So we got x plus y is equal to that 7,000. And then we had our negative 0.03x plus our 0.06y equal to 2. And our x was our loss, so we lost 1,400. 3% of our 1,400, and we had 5,600 in our gain. Lydia has half of her investments in stock paying an 11% dividend and the other half in stock paying 14% interest. For total annual interest is $440. How much does she have invested? Okay, so we got in each and we got a total. And one of the reasons, going back to doing that half in one, half in the other, which means if half is one, half in the other, that means our investments are equal, which means that we can substitute this y out for our x. So we can put that straight in there and call this 0.11x plus 0.14x is equal to this 440. If we add these two together, that gives us 0.25x is equal to the 440. And so we're just going to divide both sides by 0.25. And that means that in each investment, we should have 1,760. And then our total is is going to be 2 of those. So we can either multiply it by 2 or add another 1770 to this, which is going to give you 3520. A metallurgist has one alloy containing 35% titanium and another containing 64% titanium. How many pounds of each alloy must he use to make 52 pounds of a third alloy containing 38% titanium? This one's a lot like our milk problem. We need a certain amount of pounds of each one of these alloys. And so we're trying to mix them together to end up at this 38%, right? So let's go ahead. And don't forget when you're doing this to include this percent and the amount of total pounds that you got here. Okay. So I'm going to multiply this thing times a negative 0.35 on each one. That way I get a negative 0.35x here, which will cause these to eliminate. Negative 0.35y. And then I get 18.2. And this is also going to be negative because a positive times a negative equals a negative. All right. So then we're going to have to multiply. Let's do this one. We'll just say what this one equals. We'll do 0.38 times 52. This actually equals 19.76. So now we can just do the subtraction here and the subtraction here. So this gives me 1.56. If I do 0.64 minus 0.35, that gives me 0.29y. So let's divide by 0.29. I did get a funky number. In fact, this is what I got was a weird number. So this 9 is going to make this 7 go up to be an 8. So this y is equal to 5.38. It's at around the 2 decimal places, which means we need to plug this thing in right here. So we're going to have x plus 5.38 is equal to this 52. So we're going to subtract this 5.38 on both sides. I didn't think it already started doing this to us this early in the game, but we can certainly be pretty precise with this stuff, even though we get kind of funky decimals. So this x is actually equal to 46.62. Remember that was close to our, or that was represented by our 35%. Oh, we're supposed to put on our equations first. Remember we had x plus y. That equaled 52. And our other one was 0.35x plus 0.64y. And this is equal to 0.38. I think it's going to let us put in our percentage. We're just going to have to say what it's equal to. Remember that was equal, we already did the math on that. That was equal to 19.76. So at the end, we said our 35% was 46.62. And our y was 5. Or our 64% was 5.38. A grocer wants to mix 2 kinds of coffee. One sells for $1.40 per pound. The other sells for $2.95 per pound. He wants to mix a total of 21 pounds and sell it for $2.60 per pound. How many pounds of each kind should he use in the new mix? Round off the answers to the nearest 100. Let's go ahead and multiply this 260 by these 21 pounds. Remember, this is our pounds added together. That's 21. This is the price per pound, price per that pound, per pounds. And then that's together. So this 260 times this 21, this is going to be 54.60 here. Okay. So that's what we're going to use in place of this. But I'm going to go ahead and multiply this one to eliminate this one. So we're going to multiply this one times a negative 1.40. That way that'll go away. This one also gets that negative 1.40. And then 21 times 0.4. And that's negative, so it's a negative 29.4. So this will cancel. This is going to give us 1.55y. And then we do the subtraction on this. That gives us 25.2. So then we're just going to have to do the division. So we're going to divide both sides by 1.55. Once again, it gives us a pretty funky number, but 295 is 16.26. I have an 8 after that, which made that 5 round up to be a 6. So now we're going to plug this in to this equation. So we get x plus our y is 16.26. And this equals this 21. So then we'll just subtract 16.26 on each side. And find out what our $1.40, how many pounds of the $1.40 we have. And that's 4.74. How many liters of a 25% acid solution and a 75% acid solution must be used to produce 80 liters of a 60% acid solution? Round 2 decimal places if necessary. So let's go ahead and multiply this 0.6 times the 80. Remember, this is adding our liters together. That's going to equal 80. This is the percent for this liter. This is the percent for this liter. It's going to equal the combined percent of acid. So the total combined percent of, or liters of acid, if we just extracted just the acid out of this thing, should be 48 liters of acid out of a total of 80. Okay, so let's multiply this thing to eliminate. Remember, this is our smallest one, so I'm going to multiply by negative 0.25. That way we get a negative 0.25 x here after we multiply it here. And a negative 0.25 y here. I believe that's going to be 20, negative 20. Let me double check that. And I'm right. So that's negative 20 here. So this will eliminate. This will get us to 0.5y. And this equals 28. So then we'll just divide both sides by 0.5. And this one actually turns out to be okay. And it's just 56. So we're going to plug in 56 to this y. We get x plus 56 equals 80. And then we're just going to subtract 56 on both sides. And we're going to find out that x equals 24. Where x was our 25%.